Hello, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Richard from North Borneo Historical Society. Thank you for tuning in tonight for tonight's show. And today we have a very special guest with us today to talk about the history of Sabah and their life when they were actually working and living in Sabah a couple of decades ago. So first off, I'm just going to do a bit of introduction. My name is Richard. I'm the founder of North Borneo Historical Society, and the society was founded roughly about 10 years ago, mainly to share about Sabah's rich history to the world. So we have done a couple of projects in the past, mainly gathering information, gathering historical archives, historical photos, and of course, you have seen most of the photos have been shared on the Facebook page. So today, we have, as I mentioned, we have very special guests all the way from the UK, from Sudan, and France, if I'm not mistaken. Hannah, you're based there, right?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right,
based in
all right.
France.
That's great. All right, so tonight's show, it's going to be really interesting. As I mentioned in the topic of tonight's Facebook live show, the title is "Parachuting Doctor in North Borneo," and we'll be explaining about that during the show. So, just a bit of introduction. We have Dr. Dingley in the show, who is seated and labeled as Opa. All right, and we also have his son, John, and his daughter, Hannah. And I will actually ask them, each of them, to do a brief introduction about themselves. First off, can we have Dr. Dingley just probably very briefly, about 1 to 2 minutes, to briefly introduce yourselves?
Well, I'm just 90. I was in Sabah for some 25 years, from just the end of the colonial period to the mainly in the new period. I'm, what's that, 90 now? I don't feel it, but I am. And I'm living in England in retirement. I don't know what else you want to know about me. I was
No worries. I will. I
ophthalmology.
will. Mhm. I will do actually help you do a bit of introduction shortly. I actually wrote one paragraph very briefly about yourself, but let us have John as well to introduce himself.
Hi, yeah, John Dingley, and after leaving Sabah, I went off and joined the British Army, and from there I did 7 years in the British Army, and then I went into humanitarian work, initially demining, and now I work for the World Food Programme as a security officer here in South Sudan, in Juba at the moment. So I think being brought up in Sabah certainly gave me the itchy feet for travel. And certainly it's always in my heart, and yeah, well, let's see how the thing goes, and hope we can bring some memories back.
Thank you, John. All right, Hannah, would you mind to just do a bit introduction about yourself, please? Probably you're on mute. Just 1 second.
Am I okay?
All right. Yep, you're fine now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Well, Hannah, otherwise known as Lise. I was born in North Borneo in Kota Kinabalu, and it's still home to me. I got married to an Englishman, and so lived in England for a bit. And then I took him to Malaysia, and I made him climb Mount Kinabalu before I'd marry him. It was sort of a rite of passage. And then And then we've lived in England, we lived in the Caribbean, and now for the last 25 years, we've lived in the south of France. But Borneo is still my home and where I come from. I love it.
That's great, Hannah. Thank you. Looks pretty at the back there. Anyway, yeah, let me just do a quick introduction about Dr. Dingley. I actually wrote a very short paragraph here, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read it. So Dr. Edward Richard Dingley, OBE, recently celebrated his 90th birthday. That was about 3 weeks ago. So Dr. Dingley was former Royal Air Force parachute rescue team in Malaya, and after a career in medicine in Sabah, he retired back to Somerset in the UK. So his full title is Dr. Edward Richard Dingley, OBE, KSTJ, KNM, SDK, and he served in the Royal Air Force in the Malayan emergency, where he was a doctor in the Royal Air Force, Far East Air Force Parachute Rescue Team. So his primary role was to jump into the Malayan jungle to rescue downed aircrew and to support special forces operations on jungle penetration missions. So as you can see, it's a very critical role there. He was also an active Rotarian with membership in Sabah. Dr. Dingley was made an OBE for services for various charities in Malaysia, where he carried out the first cataract operation on an orangutan in the 1970s, which we'll be talking about it later. And he was also made a Knight of St. John for service to St. John's ambulance in Malaysia and the UK. All right, so that's a brief introduction about Dr. Dingley. So I would I think the audience are pretty curious. Dr. Dingley, why did you choose Sabah in the first place?
I don't know. I liked it as soon as I saw it. I was in the RAF in Singapore, and I went to Sabah on 2 occasions on duty, and I liked the place. And so I talked to the Director of Medical Services about the possibility of a job when I left the Air Force, and he was very enthusiastic. So when I left the Air Force, I actually didn't go straight to Sabah, but went to Jerusalem for 15 months. And learned my trade more practically than I would have done anywhere else. And then went back to Sabah in was then North Borneo. So I went out as a colonial officer, and when we were independence, I was given normal life service. So I stayed until I was 55.
Right, and that was when you arrived. That was in 1961. Is that correct?
Oh, I should think so. Something like that.
All right. All right. So now we're gonna ask John and Hannah. Probably a bit. Were you guys born in Sabah or grew up in Sabah? Probably just a bit about your life in general when you guys were there. Maybe we can start with John first.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was born actually on holiday in UK. But aged about 6 weeks, the moment I could fly, apparently, I was flown out with mum. So mum ended up being stranded in UK because the airlines in those days wouldn't let you fly if you were too pregnant or whatever. And so I was actually born in UK. And so really, then it was all my childhood growing up there. I went to Yukyu kindergarten on the Tuaran Road out towards Likas. And then on to briefly some homeschooling from my mother. And then I went to the international school, which originally started its life in the top 2 floors of the St. John's Ambulance building at the, I think it's the Karamunsing roundabout where the mosque is.
Right.
It's not there anymore. That used to be where the Red Cross and the St. John's ambulance were. And then after that, when I got to 8 years old, I was sent off to boarding school in the UK. But every holiday was back out to Sabah. And so really sort of, very much part of my upbringing, etc. We were always looked after wonderfully by our ama, and we spoke Malay in the house a lot, and still do sometimes now, although saya sudah lupa banyak saya punya Melayu. Antau saya boleh cakap, oh, apa kabar, baiklah, and I know a few of the old jingles are always stuck in my head, and Hu Hiba, the song they used to play at the beginning, at the beginning of the TV things, and the national anthem and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Sabah was an extraordinary place to grow up. I always say I had a millionaire's upbringing on Malaysian government civil service salary, which is what Dad earned for his work working for the Malaysian government. But we just had this amazing opportunity, really. Dad, through his work, traveled through the country. We would always go along with him. He always brought us along. And it was always fun going into the villages and stuff, because, I was a little white, blonde, blue-eyed boy. And of course, in many of the Ulu places, they'd never seen a orang putih, and orang putih. And I used to fear the ladies who cut the grass at our house, because they would pinch you and say, "Ooh, cantik orang putih," and just pinch you with their fingers like this. And I'd go around with red cheeks. I used to go and run and hide in the jungle when the ladies would come, and the swisher ladies, we call them, would cut the grass with their swishers. So yeah, it's an amazing place, really. And I had the opportunity to do so many things that my friends from UK would have never been able to do. I learned to sail. Dad taught me to sail, which I used to regularly embarrass him at the yacht club by capsizing my boat right in front of the yacht club when he was the Commodore, and generally being irresponsible. But yeah, it's great. And always in the back of my mind, it comes up in my work in the UN, particularly here in South Sudan. We have a lot of Indonesian policemen. And in Sudan, when I was there were Malaysian policemen. And I often sort of rather go up and surprise them and walk up and say, "Hey, apa kabar? Huh? Mana kau punya kampung?" And they look at, oh, Malaysia, pointing to the flag. Kau itu saya cakap Melayu dengan kau. And that the best one was in Bosnia, where a corporal, the driver of the commanding officer of the Malaysian battalion, just went into almost shock because he was up on this Bosnian mountain with about a foot of snow, freezing. And I, sejuk, huh? Banyak sejuk, yeah. And we got into this conversation in Malay, and then suddenly he realized he was speaking Malay to this large hat-wearing, blonde, blue-eyed guy in the middle of Bosnia. So yeah, it still affects my life today very, very much. And if anyone asks me where my heart is and where I originate, it is Sabah. It's KK. KK saya punya kampung. Wow. And all those sort of things. And I actually got this mug specially here in Juba because there's a funny joke in the family is whenever I get going, I start singing the old jingles to the adverts, and the Milo anda jadi sehat dan kuat, begitu baik. And so I just got this out, and this is to make the family laugh. And then there was, minumlah untuk minumlah anda, minumlah gembira, minumlah Pepsi. All those jingles, they're still there. Biru baru, banyak gue. So it's hard to understand. I'm now 55, and yet I left the last time I was in Sabah when Dad was living there. I was 19. We have gone back a couple of times to go and visit friends there, but it's still completely formed much of the way I think, the way I deal with people, the Sabah mentality, the hospitality, the manners. Gee, our Alma, she would pukul, saya pukul kau, huh? If I misbehaved. And so you learn to be very polite to people. So yeah, over to you, Hannah.
Well, you said it all. No. Well, I mean, yeah, for me, well, I was born there. And it's definitely home to me. It's where my heart is. I wish I could go back more often. Although, actually, it's also kind of depressing to go back, because it's obviously not the same place. You know, when you're in one place,
different.
you don't notice all the changes. Whereas for us, with going back many years later, you see all the changes. It's not the same place, but it's still where my heart is. I mean, many amazing memories. Still got friends there. Still in touch with them. We were very privileged, of course, as kids. When we were sent off to boarding school, we didn't appreciate it. We felt like a bit like weirdos. It's like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Borneo. Well, where on earth is that on the map? We didn't appreciate what we had, but now I've always strived to try and give almost my children the sort of childhood I had, which was extremely difficult. But I have, I took my children to the Caribbean and then the south of France. I just want them to have that outdoors way of life, but you can't duplicate what we had. I think what was so special about where we grew up is that it was all the multi-racial, multi-religion, no barriers. Everybody was friends with everybody. I mean, we celebrated New Year's all year round, because there was, whether it was the Indian Diwali or whether it was the Chinese New Year, the Christian New Year, the Muslim New Year, there was always some sort of celebration or ritual going on for some sort of race, creed, religion. It didn't matter. We were all together, and it was fabulous. It was wonderful, learning about all the different cultures. And I think just growing up with people who, nature and everything else mattered. It was simplicity, and not fancy. You go to the south of France and the beaches are cram-packed with restaurants and people and things. I just crave for those beaches in Malaysia where there's nothing and nobody,
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the beauty of it all. And I know it's changed. I mean, I think the beaches are busier and tourism, and of course that's great for the country. But I loved how it was. I loved the dirt roads. In fact, it took you forever to get somewhere, and you could go to places that nobody had been before. Now, whether it's a jungle pool or a river or climbing a mountain that not many people had the privilege to do, but now it's like a tourist destination, which is great for them. But I'm glad I was there to appreciate it before all that happened.
That's great, and thank you for that. Yeah, that is why I think one of the key things that we want to do at North Borneo Historical Society is to really share about the past, Sabah's past especially. I think that is very important for people so that they're able to appreciate how Sabah used to be. So I'm just gonna start showing some of the photos that you guys have shared with me. Just give me 1 second. So I know there are a bunch of photos, but we're gonna start off with this one first. 1 second, just gonna add this. All right. Perhaps we can get Dr. Dingley to probably explain a bit about this photo.
That's right. Me as Commissioner of St. John. Yes.
And this was taken
That was
on a
taken in.
special.
That was taken in the garden of the house in KK.
And that uniform, I know, because I used to go with Dad to the Merdeka Day parade and things like that. That's probably why I ended up joining the army, because I'd see all the soldiers marching. But going with Dad, walking down to the Padang in KK, and he was wearing this uniform, he would get saluted by every policeman, soldier, everything. And I always used to be very proud to walk beside Dad, as all these very senior policemen and even the traffic cops would stop the traffic for him when he was wearing this uniform.
It was a useful uniform.
All right. Okay, that's great. I think yeah, that's exactly. So how did you got involved with St. John's ambulance in Sabah initially, Dr. Dingley?
Well, I worked in Jerusalem at the St. John Ambulance Hospital, or the St. John Organization Hospital, there in the eye department. And when I came back, when the commissioner retired, the governor summoned me up to his office and said, "You are the new commissioner of St. John." And I said, "But I don't know anything about St. John Ambulance." He said, "Never mind, you'll find out." And, so I was landed, and it was great fun. Got me around to places that I wouldn't always go, see people I wouldn't otherwise have known, and look after the organization for a few years.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think I have another photo. I think perhaps it says. I think it's also a St. John Ambulance event. I think it was taken in 1972. All right. How about this photo, Dr. Dingley?
With Louis Mountbatten.
I'm not very important in that one. It's the visit of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, and that is where, what's his name?
Lord Louis Mountbatten.
Who was it?
Louis Mountbatten.
Louis Mountbatten was with them, and that's his visit to the organization's headquarters to meet my members.
Wow.
And the reason behind the connection there is Lord Louis Mountbatten's wife, Edwina Mountbatten, Lady Edwina Mountbatten, actually passed away in Jesselton in the 1950s. And she was on a tour for St. John's Ambulance in the region when she died. And in fact, there's a memorial, was a memorial in the building of St. John's Ambulance there. I think that's Karamunsing roundabout. And Lord Louis Mountbatten came and he wanted to see this memorial as well as see the organization.
I see. All right. Okay. Now talking about the visit of the royal visit, I think I think you guys shared the photo as well. Let me just pull it out real quick. This one. All right. So I can see you there, Dr. Dingley.
Yes, so that was with the Queen.
Correct.
In the oh my goodness, by the sea.
Tanjanaru.
Yeah, which is known as the Prince Philip Park.
We had sent a blind person to England, and she'd met him there, and she wanted to see the work of the blind here. So when she came, we put in an organization of the blind on the Tanjong Aru beach. where she was having a general sort of get together with people. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And Dad, tell the story about what Princess Anne said to you on that visit.
Which, well, I know, she said, when her uncle came forward from where he was to say this is St. John Ambulance, and she said, "Of course I know." It was very
But
assuring.
yeah, it was also quite funny because Dad had ended up having to be in so many different places. He met the royals at the QEH and at the park, St. John's Ambulance, and a number of other receptions and things. And I think Princess Anne once asked you, "So what hat are you wearing this time?"
Yeah.
Because every time it was different.
True, very true. It was quite a day, that was.
But I was the only one of us kids there for this. I remember it very vividly, and it was an amazing event. I think they actually spent about 3 days in KK, the Royal Yacht Britannia. They lived on board, and it was a busy 3 days. And I just remember being shuffled around, stood on the side of the street with my little Union Jack to wave it. And trying to I was basically looked after by our Ama Dayang because Mum and Dad were so involved in all the various different activities.
Yes, we got too involved in organizations, really.
Yeah, I can imagine in those days, especially if you have, important role in the government, of course, you'll be asked to do multiple things. I mean, that still happens until today. And I believe there was let me just pull up a photo. I think the ship Britannia, when it came to KK in 1972.
That's her.
There she is, yeah.
And we were away at boarding school, me and Lois.
Yeah. I remember going up to the Signal Hill, and the Robinsons had their apartment up there. Robbie Robinson and Rose Robinson, and I was best friends with Peter, their son, who's still in KK now. And I remember going up there, and we could see the ship in the harbour below. It was amazing.
It looks very pretty. I think probably this is the final visit, right, by Queen Elizabeth. Was there any visit after that?
No.
Not as far as I know. We had the Agongs visit as well in 72.
Right.
But no, I think that she's the last royal to have gone out to Sabah.
I think so.
Right. Yeah. All right. So now I'm just going to ask more on the related to the family. So I'm just going to pull out a photo of your home. I'm not sure what year was this taken, but perhaps any one of you would like to talk a bit about this house that you guys used to live in.
That's the old. Yes, that's a nice house.
It was a very nice house, and sadly, it doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore.
No, when I was last there, it's all burnt down, and a few pylons remain. Very sad.
Oh no! Oh dear.
The swing is still in the garden when I last went, but it was a medical department house. I think, Dad, you lived for the first year on Bukit Punai, but then you moved here to Bukit Kramat, which is Jalan Tiga Setengah Jalan Tuaran. Batu Tiga Setengah. And Dua Setengah, was it? 2.5. It was a most amazing house, all built of wood. Even when we first, this is obviously a bit later because I think that's got the asbestos roof on, which they put later. But initially when we got there, it was the old Billion shingle roof. So it must have been one of the very early ones built not long after the war, the Second World War. But it was all open plan, verandas, and there was only one air-conditioned room, and you can just see the air conditioner there, which was the girls' room. That was the only air conditioner, and it was only allowed to be switched on if someone was very ill. We all slept under fans, and in fact, even to this day now, I can't sleep unless I can hear the sound of a fan, because as a kid, that's how we went to sleep. But it was a fabulous house.
Me too. No, it's a wonderful house. Wonderful house.
The rooms were huge.
It was huge. I mean, it was very big and spacious. No glass, all just sort of like, mosquito nettings and
Mosquito netting and
and
it was huge, allowing it to become cool. Really.
Yeah.
The house above us, which was Dr. Skinner, I think, is still in existence. Well, it was when I last went back to Sabah in 2011. Yes. Very, very dilapidated, sadly, but just a wonderful place to grow up. I used to crawl underneath the house. You see, it's on low stilts, and I had these dens underneath the house where I'd play with my toy soldiers and things. And then up on the top here, where they're standing, this bank was the good Sabah red laterite soil.
Tanah Merah, yes.
And I used to just wallow like a buffalo, like a kerbau in these holes I'd make in the rain. And it was just an amazing adventure, really.
You made quite a mess of the place.
But we had all sorts of animals. We had cats and dogs, and then we, through the years, had slow lorises and owls and deer and monkeys, and I mean everything. Mum would adopt anything that was being sold off in the market, and we had it in the garden. We even had the usual sort of rabbits and things like that as well.
That's nice. Now I'm going to show the sort of like a very pretty family portrait. Was taken on top of Mount Kinabalu in 1973. Perhaps you guys want to share a bit of your story going up the mountain.
Yes. We took them up there. We didn't, it was first cloudy, so that John didn't know how far he had to go. And so we got him up to the top with some rebellion, but he got there. He was very proud of having made it when he got there, when you had finished.
No, it's an amazing climb. I mean, I remember it vividly. And yes, I was a bolshy little child, but I remember Dad telling me afterwards that for a time I was the youngest child to have climbed Mount Kinabalu. I was about 7.5 years old.
Yes.
In those days, you filled in a book. I don't know if they still do. You filled in a book and you could see who'd climbed. And these books were then kept in park headquarters. And so for a long time, I was the youngest child. And then one of the Graham daughters, I think it was, the Grahams actually lived on Bukit Kramat with us. They went up as well quite a few years later. And then they took the prize as the youngest child, but I was still the youngest boy for many, many years. But Dad used to do quite a lot with the national parks, doing training and things.
Right.
First aid.
I think that's first aid. Okay. I think there's another photo of you taken at the Kinabalu Park as well. Let me just pull that up real quick. This was taken in 1971. Right.
That's when we all.
You guys.
How funny.
Share a bit about what's going on. What's going on in this photo?
We were just resting in a hut with a shelf.
Yeah, this was it's still in the park. This place, isn't it? It's a sort of semi cave under a big rock, if I remember rightly.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
But Dad and Mum were both great ornithologists, and so they used to love going up to the national park and watching the birds and what have you, and also all the other animals that you could see up there.
You had to do
And it was
something.
always, sorry?
Otherwise, being the only doctor, ophthalmologist, you were never off the telephone unless you went to the park or somewhere. There were no mobiles. They were just disappeared.
Escape.
How you escaped.
Yeah. But I remember a story of when somebody had donated a long wheelbase Land Rover. I think it was the St. John's ambulance to be an ambulance up in Ranno. And nobody in those days would drive a long wheelbase Land Rover up to Ranno because the road was so horrendous. And some of the bends in the road, you'd have to do like 5-6 turns to get round the bend. And Dad offered to drive it up there. I was 10 days old. Nobody would do this trip because it was so dangerous. My parents took me at 10 days old and my sister to drive and deliver this Land Rover up there.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's because the road, the road in those days, Richard, was designed for short wheelbase Land Rovers and Willys Jeeps. So the turning circle on all the corners, climbing the Crocker Ranges up to Ranau, were designed for the full lock of a Jeep or a short wheelbase Land Rover, not a long wheelbase Land Rover.
You mentioned about the road being horrendous. It's actually still the same until today. I mean, depending on the season, if it's a monsoon season, you still get a lot of landslides around those areas. All right. Now, you guys mentioned that you guys do travel, I mean, quite extensively to the Crocker Range, to the Kinabalu Park. Perhaps you guys want to talk a bit on this interesting photo.
Oh, after a training session with the rescue, mountain rescue.
Yes.
Yeah. Dad was doing a training with the National Park Rangers, and I think they had me wrapped up in the Robinson stretcher, and they were practicing lowering me down some. This is at the helipad at park headquarters, which is just above the park headquarters, or used to be. And they were lowering me down the sort of side of the helipad, and this Malaysian Air Force helicopter flew over, and they thought they had a real casualty. So they immediately came in and landed. And when they realized it was a training exercise, it was fabulous, because then they were able to show the park rangers how their winch worked. You can see it on the top, just above the door. They got the park rangers in. And they let them practice delivering a casualty to this helicopter. So it was a complete chance, but just one of those wonderful moments, and I remember it vividly as a little boy.
It's a fantastic film.
Fantastic day.
Fantastic day indeed. And all right.
In fact,
I'm going to show
that. Linked to the national park, Dad once did a training which lasted 2 weeks, and we lived at Sayat on the mountain, which is just above.
That's almost
Hanalapa.
reaching the peak. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so we lived there for 2 weeks while Dad trained the park rangers in mountain rescue and first aid, etc. up at that. So I don't know if there's many families that have lived literally on top of Kinabalu for 2 weeks. It was an amazing trip, out of this world, because I remember when it rained, the water coming down the sheetrock on top of Kinabalu.
Right.
It was incredible. But
it's
I
like
don't
waterfall,
think
right? Yeah, it's like almost like waterfall.
Huge waterfalls, flows. And I don't think Sayat exists anymore. But I don't know how many kids had that pleasure, thanks to our crazy old father who took us everywhere.
Well, you may have
I remember I remember staying at the Sayat during my last climb. That was probably more than 20 years ago. But yeah, I think the hut was still there back then. Not sure now. But
Okay.
that's all right. No, no, okay, John.
No.
I can see you as a boy there. Do you want to share a bit about this photo?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you learn, and I'm sure in this modern era, they would probably be trying to give me counseling and stuff for witnessing half these things that we saw. But Dad, through members of staff at the hospital, friends from St. John's Ambulance, the Blind Society, we would go all to these different places. And as Hannah talked about earlier, you know, all the various ceremonies. And I remember I think this was Harvest Festival, I've got a feeling, and they would slaughter a pig, a fully grown pig, and all the men in this kampong got this pig and surrounded, and I just watched the whole thing. And you know, it was a number of times one would do this, and then we would have this most amazing feast of babi, sedap babi. And then we would do some you know, I can't remember where it was, where we would do the dancing on the platform, the spring platform in the
longhouses.
Yeah, in the longhouses and stuff. And so, you know, and Dad would be working on these trips very often, and so he would leave Mum and us kids and do his clinic. And we would then go off and literally be in amongst the people, walking around, seeing things, getting my cheek pinched, etc. Yeah. So this was the slaughtering of one of those pigs, which was pretty gruesome in many ways. But you know, thank goodness you know where meat comes from when you do that and see that sort of thing.
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask Dr. Dingley now, just a bit about your work. I actually like this photo. Look really cool there with just your short pants, but while doing an eye check for this person. And this was taken in 1980. Can you please tell a bit about your work with the community back then, Dr. Dingley?
Yeah, that's a slit lamp examination of a patient, and I'm not sure which staff nurse it is that was with me. I don't know. But we went around the country. The slit lamp was a pretty rare animal. There was one in Sabah, in Kinabalu, and there was one in Sandakan, and that was about it. But they were very useful instruments.
Right. And how often do you have to travel around? I mean, around Sabah back then, is it every week or every few days?
I went away for a few days every week, on the whole. Occasionally, we went away for about 3 weeks at a time to the rural areas, and just moved shop, really. And often I would send one of my hospital assistants ahead of me, and he would look at the whole lot and collect a collection of people for me to see, and then we'd operate, and then I would go on to the next place, leave him behind to take care of them, and go on to another one. So
right.
It was pretty primitive travel, but very interesting travel.
So I could imagine John and Hannah would normally tag along as well.
Before they went to school, they would tag along as well. Yes.
Yeah, but then after when I left school and I went back to Malaysia to live, I would take great honor in nominating myself to be Dad's driver, and I would take him to these places, and then I would go off whilst he was doing the clinics. I would go off and explore and take photographs and stuff like that. You know, I'd be his sort of driver. Because I just loved exploring and seeing the people, and I got myself into a few difficulties sometimes and you didn't have mobile phones to call for help, where I'd go and get this car, the Land Rover, stuck in a riverbed, and then he'd wonder why I didn't turn up for about 5 hours. But no, it was good fun. That was when I was sort of finished school in England and went back home to live. Yeah.
Wow. Is it, when you mentioned about the Land Rover, is it actually the same Land Rover in these photos here?
We had several different Land Rovers or Range Rovers at the time. So yeah, it was actually a Range Rover that I got stuck in a riverbed one time.
I think this one is the Blind Society Eye Clinic Land Rover, which was something that Dad had specially built in UK, and they shipped out. So the inside of the vehicle there had all the special wooden drawers and everything for all the medical equipment, so he could move it safely. And then he could flip out the back, and he would then have his mobile clinic, so he could then test patients.
Yes. Great fun that was.
You took that everywhere.
It sure looks fun. I mean, imagine, still imagining the road condition in those days. So you really need this kind of vehicle to get to all these remote places.
I remember when we were traveling in these old Land Rovers on the roads there, when a vehicle would come from the other direction, of course, there'd be a lot of dust if it was dry. And there was like a drill within the family in the car, because the air conditioning was, and if you look at the right picture there, you can see the flaps on the front. That was the air conditioning. It was just air blowing straight in or over the bonnet. And then we had the tropical roof. So you had air vents in the roof and all the windows would be open. And as the vehicle came from the other direction, immediately Mum and Dad would close their doors. They would slap the ones on the roof, slam the windows. We in the back would reach up, slam those vents and slam our windows. And it was sort of like a drill. And the moment you had gone through the dust, it was then the opposite. It's sort of like this. Nobody had to say anything. It was just like a car coming, boom, 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 and then wait, and then dum, 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 and everything.
Yeah, I remember when I was living in Tawau many years ago. The same thing. I used to live in a plantation. The roads were, dirt roads as well. So I can really imagine what you just said. And all right, I think I still have a few more photos left. We still have a bit of time, and then I
remember one trip where Mum and Dad drove from Tawau all the way back to KK. Well, obviously they'd driven there, and we went to stay. I think was that Murray Graham's estate, Dad?
Yes.
In Tawau. And we kids were lucky because Murray Graham flew us from Tawau to Ranau, but Mum and Dad had to drive back. And in those days, the road from Sandakan was really a timber logging road, and that was it.
Yeah,
it took them about 8 or 9 or 10 hours. I think it was 12 hours, a 12-hour journey.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
in those days. Right. Okay, Dr. Dingley, maybe just a bit of, we can touch a bit about your experience running the Rotary Club in KK.
You only run it for a year. You only run it for a year. You're president for 1 year. And yes, you have a project to do, and mine was to put books into the secondary school libraries. That is the picture of me at the dinner when I was made president.
Any idea what year was this?
No, I'm trying to think. I don't know.
All right. No worries. Actually, I'm just going to speak to the audience. If you guys have any specific question or any question for our guest tonight, please just leave your comments. I'm actually browsing through the comments if there's any question for them. So meanwhile, I'm going to continue sharing some photos. We still have a bit of time. Just 1 second.
Dad also helped establish the Likas Rotary Club. That was one of the project tasks he was given by the KK Rotary Club, which was quite an interesting thing to do, I think, forming the second club in Sabah at the time.
Wow, that's great. All right, and there's one more photo that I want to share. It's actually we were supposed to discuss this much earlier. It's about that operation on the orangutan.
Yes.
Because this is very new to me. Never heard anything like this before. So perhaps Dr. Dingley, do you want to share a bit about the story? How did this happen?
This
and the process?
Naughty orangutan was chasing other orangutans and being a nuisance, and he climbed up an electric pole instead of a tree. And electrocuted himself, fell out, and gave himself cataracts. So he couldn't see, and they could all get their own back. But when I operated on him, he could see again, and he chased them off. Great.
And I was made to understand that.
He's almost smiling in that picture, isn't he? When he can see again.
Yes, that's it.
And I was made to understand that this is not the only one. I think there are another two. Is that correct?
It's the only one I did. I don't know if anybody's done anyone since.
I think didn't the vet do one after you, Dad? After you'd worked with him?
The vet?
Yeah.
He didn't know anything about ophthalmology.
Oh, yeah. Because we went to Sepelok because of this quite a lot as kids.
Yeah.
And we would go and see the orangutans. And there was one incident where my mother was attacked by a big angry orangutan female called Joan, who was notorious for attacking ladies wearing skirts. And it just happened that Mum was wearing a skirt that day. Yeah, that was quite a frightening experience because the rangers at Sepelok had to jump on the back, two of them jumping on the back of this orangutan to try and wrestle it off Mum.
Wow, must be quite an experience.
That was a dramatic day.
It was exciting.
All right, so we actually have one question related to St. John Ambulance, but I'm going to pull this photo since I quite like this one. Perhaps Dr. Dingley can tell a bit what's going on. Is that your official vehicle?
That's one of
back then.
That's an ambulance. Yes, I don't think that was actually doing St. John duties. I think that was during the visit of the Uppingham School, and we used St. John ambulance vehicles to drive them around because they were suitably sized. I don't know where that is.
I'm not sure. Dad bought a number of interesting ambulances for St. John's in his time. One of them was a huge, we used to call it the High Old ambulance, which was an old British Army huge truck that could have like 8 stretchers in it. And Dad actually got his heavy goods vehicle license to be able to drive the thing. And then there was a Bedford, and then there were the 2 of these like this, the Mercedes vans, which I remember to use particularly at sporting events, St. John's Ambulance. So when they had a bike race, when they had the marathon, I remember sitting with Dad in the front of those as he drove around.
Also just at the padangs with people fainting.
Yes, when the soldiers got a bit hot, keeled over.
Yeah. Usually during big events as well, when you're sort of forced to gather at the padang and under the hot sun.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we have one question from the audience. So this Abed He's my friend. He's also a historian from Kiningau. He's been writing a couple of books on Sabah's history. So he's asking, I myself is a St. John ambulance member and the area commander for the interior residency. My question is, how was the St. John ambulance in Sabah back then in the 60s and 70s?
Very simple. There wasn't much St. John to start with.
Until you got it going.
Well, I revamped it after I took it over from another expat. It was given it by the governor, who told me I was the commissioner, just as he told me I was to look after the blind. He's good celebrating people by making them work. And yes, St. John was fairly busy in the end, but only in the town areas. It wasn't in the rural areas.
Right. Yeah, I think even the St. John ambulance, I think it has grown quite extensively over the last 10 to 20 years. Even when I went to school, my classmates, they used to be part of the St. John ambulance member.
Yeah.
All right. There is somebody called Robert. The Dingley family were regular Sunday attendees at Christchurch Likas, which I was a youth there in the 70s. Loved going to their house for caroling every Christmas time. They had very yummy sandwiches, fond memories of them.
Mum's mince pies. Yeah, they were a favourite.
I sent a photograph of one of those carol events. I mean, it was an annual thing, and there was 200 people would come. I mean, it was amazing how Mum would cater for all these people, and everyone would join in, and it was wonderful.
It was a really, really great thing, and that house that we had was so suited to it because the living room and dining room area were all one, and so the whole environment there was just it's an amazing feeling. But I just remember as a kid going into the kitchen and seeing mountains and mountains of mince pies. And our job as kids, in fact, there's Lois, our sister, our late sister in the middle there in the red dress. As kids, our job was to go around with these trays of mince pies and distribute them to all the people who were there at the carols.
Wow, that looks fantastic. I think a lot of people would have remembered. I'm not sure where these people mostly are today, but it seems that people remembered. All right, so I think we have about 2 minutes left. Maybe I want to go each one. Dr. Dingley, John, Hannah, what are your hopes and aspirations for Sabah and the people? I can start with Dr. Dingley.
I think Sabah's got a very good future. It's always been friendly. It's a mix of races and all get on well together. There's no religious discrimination either. It's a wonderful place to live.
Thank you, Doctor. John?
Yeah, I mean, I hope to get back there sometime. I still have friends there who I'd love to go and visit and stuff. And it's to me, it's got a bright future. I think Malaysia in general is a great example within Southeast Asia. And I think some of my African colleagues, sometimes when I'm working with them, as I often do in post-conflict countries, etc., and I always say, look at Malaysia. It was the same as you in 1960, and I'm now living. My family live in Kenya, And I'm say to people there, look, you could be like Malaysia. You know, they've got a Formula One. They've got so much going for them. They've got technological industries working, etc. And the population of Malaysia, when it was formed in 1963, and the population of Kenya was about the same. The raw materials were pretty similar, but the Malay and the Sabah spirit really showed, and the will and sort of drive of the people was always astounded me. And I always refer back to Sabah when trying to get my African colleagues to understand that they can make their countries successful. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I do hope I can go back soon.
All right, really looking forward to that. Hannah?
Well, the same. I just think when people say, oh, you grew up in a Muslim country, and I say yes, but you weren't restricted to that. It was, everybody was accepted, and you rejoiced in everyone's religious beliefs and culture. And it was just a big melting pot of just accepting everybody for who they are and where they come from, and keep that. I think that's wonderful. I don't know what else one can say, really. I love the place, and it's home, and it's where my heart is, and it's definitely where I'm from. I am a Sabahan. That's it.
Kau orang asli, huh?
Yes.
Nice to go back.
All right.
And as you can see, it's all over. It's not here, but you can see Sabah's always with us. We have the paintings of Peter Yu. There's one behind Dad there. I've got my PTUs at home in Kenya. Hannah has hers. And it's always there with us. And we love Sabah, and, God bless every Sabahan.
All right, that's great. Anyway, thank you again. Dr. Dingley, John, and Hannah for spending some time together with us tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hopefully we can do another round. Still a lot of photos actually that we haven't shared. It's just that we don't have enough time for today. But in any case, if you guys have any further questions, you can leave your comments down below. I think John will be going through the comments later and perhaps help to answer some of your questions. And thank you again, Dr. Dingley, John, Hannah. Please take care, and then I hope to see you guys either here in Malaysia or actually there, wherever you guys are at the moment.
Well, thank you, Richard, and wonderful what you're doing. Great, you're promoting it. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih banyak, and jumpa lagi, and selamat malam Malaysia.
Ya, selamat malam.
Selamat malam.
Selamat.
Jumpa lagi.
Jumpa lagi.
Selamat
Terima
tinggal.
kasih. Terima kasih. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.